everyone, to Common Sense Choices, and I'm Linda Toupin. If this is your very first time, pull up a chair and enjoy the conversation. Unless you're driving, of course, then your hands need to be at 9 and 3, eyes straight ahead. If you're one of our loyal listeners, thank you from the bottom of my heart. It is because of you our podcast has been so successful. So you guys, you know the drill. You know what social media likes, and the internet likes, comments, and shares. Those are all votes. And so thank you for doing all of those things. Well, for those of you who are new, my podcast is built on my mantra that built a very, very successful 4-decade business. And it was based on that mantra back there on a 7-foot piece of art. So say it with me. I'm sure you know it. If not, if you're first time, buckle up. I am where I am by the choices I've made, or I've allowed others to make for me. I am where I am in my life by the choices I've made, or I have allowed others to make for me. And so if we want a different life, we simply have to make different choices. And that's a complicated subject, but at the same time, it has a basic truth. So we have to make different choices. So if this morning when you woke up, you weren't maybe super excited about the direction of your life, please do not blame others. The victim mentality is so ridiculous. Don't blame a spouse. You married them. Don't blame children. Please do not put that on children. Children aren't born to fulfill you. And do not blame your boss. You choose to go there. So if we want a different life, we simply have to make different choices. So thank you for allowing me to help you reprogram your brains. Our brains are programmed for our lives, and that happened when we were young. And if we learned it, we can unlearn it and we can learn something new. And so thank you for allowing me to be part of the voices that help you to create the future that you want. Well, today we are going to go down the path of something I think many of you will be so excited about, and that is how I reversed osteoporosis. Yes, you heard me correct. I reversed osteoporosis. And so in just a minute, I'm going to leave my house, head down to the gym, and you're going to meet the crew that I work with, the gym that I participate in, which is specially designed for people over 55, and you're going to learn how I did that. But first and foremost, how do you support the podcast? First of all, I've already told you, you vote with your likes, your comments, and your shares. And to financially support the podcast, head on over to pick our beautiful items up at www.lindatoupin.com. And over there, you'll find a fun boutique with our mantra on it, from kitchen magnets to little note cards to placards for your kid's bedroom or your office or your classroom or your therapist office or for your home. Little fun cosmetic bags and also bank bags or accessory bags. Check all those great things over there. Only $5 shipping. They're great for gifts, so pick up several. You guys, probably the thing, though, that I have enjoyed the most in the past 12 months is adding to my platform is personal coaching. And I tried it out about a year ago and have absolutely fallen in love with doing this part of my new business. And so here's how it works. You say, I need help. I need someone to be accountable to. I need someone to take a look at my life, take a look at my business. It can be personal, it can be professional. There's no parameters there. There's a whole list of things you choose from over at www.lindatoupin.com. Just click the little button that says coaching. You can fill out the little form and see all the different categories. And the way it works is you work with me for a month. We get a 1-hour call live Zoom to each other, and then we keep up with each other during the month through an app called Voxer. But I take a hard look at what you're telling me, and then we create a game plan together. Most of my clients I meet with every month, some once a quarter, or it can be one and done. There is no contract. So if you're thinking, okay, take a deep cleansing breath. I am where I am by the choices I've made. I need to make some different choices, but I need guidance in making those choices. I need someone who has had a lifetime of discernment to help me with those choices. I would be more than happy to take a look at all that with you. Okay, so having said all that, just check us all out over at lindatoupin.com. Well, right now, we're going to head down to the gym. You're going to meet Dr. Dustin Jones, and he created Stronger Life here in Lexington, Kentucky. They're looking to franchise this around the nation. And he's actually interviewing me. I'm not interviewing him. He's interviewing me because my numbers greatly improved from my DEXA scan 2 years ago. And be careful, you guys. Be careful when doctors and other well-meaning people say, well, that's just kind of what happens to you when you get old. I need for every fiber in your being to reject that thought. That is not what has to happen. You have to make some different choices, and it's not necessarily taking a pill. So if you've been a viewer of my podcast, you've met Dr. Lena Edwards, my integrative doctor. She's been my guest 3 different times. I found her 15 years ago when somebody said those words to me, well, Linda, that's just what happens to you when you get old. And I'm like, I don't like that answer. It's not a good answer. And because of my relationship with her and people like Stronger Life Gym, my life is getting stronger. My life is getting better. And when I turned 60, my affirmation was the best 30 years of my life are still ahead of me. And I'm getting ready to celebrate a big 70 birthday here pretty soon. And my mantra still is the best 30 years of my life are ahead of me. So let's head on down to the gym and let's get started.
All right, y'all, welcome to the Fitness for 55 Plus podcast brought to you by Stronger Life. My name is Dr. Dustin Jones, physical therapist. I've got a very special guest, Linda Toupin, everybody. I'm excited to have you.
Thanks, Dustin. I love being here.
Yeah, a lot of folks that are in our Facebook group are in there because of you. So I'll let you just give a real quick and dirty on who you are.
Okay.
And then I want to dive particularly into the conversation around osteoporosis, that diagnosis, what comes with it, because you've got an incredible story that I think a lot of people could benefit from. But most importantly, I think kind of the mindset that you've brought to some of the challenges you've had and how that can be helpful for others. So there's a lot of people watching, listening to know you. How do they know you?
Well, first of all, I've had a very long career in Mary Kay and started in '82, part-time job, built it to a big business, then moved on to become a national sales director and built in 2 different continents. And then I trained all over the world for Mary Kay at various times. And so I've spent my entire life building women to excellence and teaching them how to think. And so now that I'm an emeriti and no longer an active working national sales director, I began a podcast kind of bringing my wisdom from all those years to the general public, because I think everyone benefits from what I gained in those decades.
Right, which is the Common Sense Choices podcast.
It is.
And I'll link to that, show notes, YouTube, all over the place. I highly recommend that conversation. We had a fun conversation a while back.
We did.
As well. But so amazing career. You've got a big influence on a lot of folks, myself included. A lot of people here, a lot of people look up to you, and you bring a really, really awesome mindset to I think life in general. But I want to just kind of dig into your brain about the medical diagnosis like osteoporosis and what that was like for you, and just kind of. I got some questions along the way to tease out that we have from other members, but I just think it's going to be a really helpful conversation, particularly for folks that have maybe a diagnosis of osteoporosis or osteopenia, or maybe your doctor's starting to talk about bone mineral density or you're concerned about it. I think for a lot of folks, they may have a loved one or a friend that may have had some type of fracture, like a hip or arm fracture, and it can impact your life tremendously. This is a topic that for a lot of folks it's very scary, but it doesn't necessarily need to be. And so this conversation is going to be helpful there. So let's go back to bone mineral density started to become a part of the conversation, and you got a DEXA scan and you got the diagnosis. What was your mental state like in that moment when you got that diagnosis?
Well, I want to think if I go back in time, we probably started doing those in my late 50s, early 60s.
Okay.
And when I was paying for medical insurance, they did them every year, and then once I went to Medicaid at 65, they started doing them every other year. And because I guess now I understand better that it takes more than a minute to change that.
Yeah.
And so probably in the past, I want to say 8 years, I heard the word osteopenia, but I think it's like a lot of things. you go for decades of your life and you hear words like osteopenia, osteoporosis, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and you're quite certain they're not talking to you. Oh yeah.
Not me.
Oh yeah, okay, that's for those other people.
Yeah.
And then one day your doctor sits across the table from you and he's saying these words, or she's saying these words, and they're talking to you. And I think that's very sobering, because it's like for so long you think, nah, I work out, I eat well, you know, I take good care of myself, and now this person is saying these words to me. And so it feels frightening, it feels discouraging, sometimes it can feel hopeless, I think. And so osteopenia was a part of the conversation. I'm like, okay, I'll pick up my calcium, I'll eat better. And for probably, I want to say a decade, maybe 12 years, I've been under the care of a functional integrative doctor. So we kind of think,
For how long? Sorry.
I want to say maybe 12 years.
Okay.
So we've been out of the box thinking for a long time. And so we've been doing a natural biohormone replacement cream, highly monitored. Okay. Very excellent care. And so, it was like, okay, that's going on, but I think I've got it under control. We're not getting worse. But in 2022, like, the word osteoporosis was used in the follow-up. And I was like, okay, this is serious. That word is serious. And it was frightening. And so it was about that time. That was in February. And then I found out about you guys, I want to think in April and May, started coming here in July. And the first workshop that you all did, because you do workshops every month, was on osteoporosis and osteopenia, which had helped me understand it better. But then I realized, before I came here, I would have told you I worked out.
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, oh, well, maybe I don't work out. I think I work out, but I don't work out. You're supposed to get real sweaty. And so anyway, started come here in July. Did not have another DEXA scan until this February. And once it came back, the numbers were greatly improved. It was 2022, my lower back was minus 2.5, which is not a good number. And this year it was minus 1.9.
2 years.
In 2 years. And so I know some of the questions that came in was, did I change other things? No. I have always done a calcium supplement. I have always done a bio-natural hormone replacement, which also helps with bone density. I have done those things, and that has helped, I think, over the years. But the only thing that I changed in these 2 years was what you all had me do. Exercises, particularly targeting, I loved it when you said, because no one had ever said these words to me, it's like, we can make your bones make more bone. There's things I can do in that gym that tells and signals my bones, hey, I need more bone. No one had ever said those words to me. Lift weights, do this, do that.
Real general.
Real general. And it's like, my mind has to see it, like, oh, when I do these things, it wakes my bones up. And it was like, oh, okay, that makes sense to me.
Right. And I remember talking with you in the lobby, your first class. You were real concerned about that. We talked a lot about lifting weights, and I remember that conversation. And it's true, and you're not alone with, like the I thought I exercised, like that's very common, because there's a lot of folks that are active. They're doing lots of different things, walking, yoga, Pilates, and those things are good. They're really good in a lot of areas, but certain areas are not effective. And I think it is worth being honest with ourselves, of saying that some of these different modalities, types of exercise that are really popular, may not be good for all the things we want to focus on, going forward.
Well, I think there's another mental thing that goes on with a lot of people. It's, I don't want to know my number. If I don't know, then I can just put my head in the sand. Because I would say I'm in that category, or have been at various times where my life is like, oh, I really don't want to take my blood pressure, or I really don't want to know X, Y, Z, because that's going to force me to do a change I don't want to do.
I don't have a problem until I go to the doctor.
Well, but I'm also at the age now where I have parents in their 90s, and life was great. They're still on their own until mom fell at Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
And that break of her shoulder sent her in a major decline. And so I saw firsthand, and I think that really pushes me in the gym today, because I saw firsthand what a break, a serious break, does to a body at 90.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to recover from that.
Yes. Yeah, it is. And I think that's a moment that will shock a lot of people. They see a fracture, usually hip or arm, and it's very hard to bounce back from that. And it will put a mirror up in your face, like, all right, do you want to go through that? Are you going to do whatever you can to prevent that or minimize that effect? And I think, which I didn't realize it at the time, but I really admire you brought your whole life ethos into this situation, to where you got those DEXA scans, you got those numbers, you got a diagnosis, and you said, I'm going to do something about this, right? And I think you could go one or two ways. You could say, oh,
that's just what happens to you when you get old.
That's
what drove me to my integrative functional doctor. Was I had someone, when I went through menopause, go, oh, that's just what happens to you when you get old. And I'm like, I don't think that's me. No, we ain't doing that.
Right.
Whatever that is, we're not doing that.
Yeah. So you took the other path, and it just makes me think of, I don't want to butcher it, the quote from your pod. Can you share your quote?
I am where I am by the choices I've made or I've allowed others to make for me. Mm-hmm. It's personal responsibility. It's the bottom line of pretty much everything in our life. You know, if we want to change our life, we change our choices. And our choices are greatly influenced by the people we hang around, who we allow to influence us, what we watch on social media, what we watch on TV, radio. It doesn't matter. If you show me your friends, I'll show you your future. And so we have to guard that. And I think that's where the community of Stronger Life is so valuable, because I'm putting myself in the place with a lot of other people who don't want to age and break a bone. I want to have a stronger life. I mean, that's what that word means, stronger life.
Yeah.
I want to reach the end of my life still strong, still able to do everything I want to do. And so that's a choice.
Yeah, and you made that choice over and over and over and over again for several years now, and you're reaping the benefits. And I want to clarify for any people watching or listening the numbers that we threw around. So you got, Linda got a DEXA scan. If you haven't got a DEXA scan, you basically, they scan you and they are getting the density of your bones, and then they compare that. If you're over 65, they compare that to the norms of the bone mineral density of the same sex and race, but a younger group. And then that T-score is the difference of your bone mineral density compared to the younger folks, quote unquote normal. And so -1 to -2.5 is osteopenia, which is just weaker bones. So you could have like -0.9 or 0.8, and that's still considered to be normal. And then -2.5 or below that is osteoporosis. So particularly with your low back, progressed to osteoporosis, and then over the course of that 2 years went back to osteopenia.
And so how normal is that? I mean, how often does that happen? Do you know?
Yeah, so, and this is kind of new territory, because traditionally, when around bone mineral density and osteoporosis, for the longest time we've recommended exercise, right? Like you mentioned, lift some weights, or like weight-bearing activity, and there's been very generalized recommendations, but within probably the past 5 to 10 years, you're starting to see clinicians, fitness professionals start to push a little bit harder in terms of how much weight, what type of movements we do that we typically wouldn't associate with someone that has osteoporosis. Typically things you may associate with, a high school athlete or something along those lines. And there's a way that we can do some of these different activities in a safe manner, like a very progressive manner, to where we're not going to cause a fracture, and people respond really well. So if you had asked me that question 5 years ago, I wouldn't have said that's normal.
Right.
But now I'm very confident, because you're not the only one. I mean, it's almost every week.
I saw a post in our Facebook group this morning, someone else had improved.
Yes, and especially those folks that are that osteopenic, osteoporotic, they respond very well to our intervention, which is really cool. And basically, like, it's never too late. And when you are doing those things on a regular basis, and it's not quick, right? Like you said,
No.
it takes time to see, and some would say negative 2.5 to negative 1.9, like that's not a big deal. That's a significant jump, and that took every bit of 2 years.
Right.
It's not a quick fix.
No.
But it can be done. I would say if someone comes regularly, give it a year or two, and they're going to see significant change.
Right, because I come on the average of 2 times a week. That's what I do.
Yeah.
And consistently. So, I mean, I even tried to do a DEXA scan last year, and they're like, you can pay for it, but it takes 2 years to see a difference. I'm like, okay, I'm not a very patient person. So.
Yeah, there's most of the studies are going to be 8 to 12 months, and there's a really good one is published about 6 years ago called the Liftmore trial, and they were able to show an improvement in a 8-month period. So yeah, it can be relatively. It wasn't a huge difference, but a significant difference.
Right.
So I want to just talk briefly about what you are doing, because some of the people may be wondering, like, well, what is it like? So there's some key variables that are really important. So one, and you mentioned this, is the resistance training, lifting heavy things. So when we lift heavy things, like at Stronger Life, we use dumbbells, we use medicine balls. We've got our stability trainers, which are big tubes of water that are pretty heavy. So anytime you're handling external load, heavy load, that makes your muscles stronger. It makes a lot of things stronger, but it strengthens your bones. If you do a bunch of reps of like a lightweight, so if you do like 2-pound dumbbell, like aerobic class, that's good, but it's not heavy enough to really stimulate the bones. So it's heavy, and we would call that high intensity resistance training. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, after the amount of load, you think about the rate of loading.
Okay.
So how quickly we load the bones, and that's where we get into impact exercises. So Linda regularly, in class, we'll do like stomping, jumping, these quick movements, shifting weight. The increased rate of loading also stimulates bone growth. So you need a lot of load, but then you need quick load, a higher rate of loading. So those two things stretched out over months and years, your bones really, really like. Also, your muscles really like too. So you get a lot of benefits. Bones just happen to be one of them.
Right.
Of the many.
Right.
So,
and then, when you make us close our eyes, we're really stimulating our brain too.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we do those things with our eyes closed.
Right. We just add the layers. And the art of it is how we start and then how we progress. Because you want to start with a load that you're not going to get hurt, that you can handle, but it's not like too easy. But then when you make progressions, they're very small. So like, let's say I started with using a 5-pound weight. I'm not going to jump to like a 15-pound weight.
Right.
I would do maybe a 7.5, 8, or maybe a 10, right? So it's those small jumps. And I don't know if you noticed this, but when I'm coaching you, especially early on, I wasn't like, heavier, come on now, big jump, blah, blah, blah. Like, just letting you do your thing, get consistent. But then over time, then I'll be like, Linda, that looks really easy. Let's.
I believe Jeff has said that to me a number of times this month. Linda.
yeah. Or we'll bring the weight over.
It's
Yeah, but if I would have done that out the gate, that's not good, right? That's where things could get a little.
It's like, I don't think I like you very much today. I might not come back.
Right. So that's what Linda has done, and you can do that too. All of our Strong Life members are doing that as well, and you do it over time. I don't want to promise this to anyone that thinks, I want to do my 6-week bone builder boot camp. No, this doesn't work like that. But I think it all comes back to you putting your motto to work. I mean, I know you do it in so many areas of life, and you applied it to this, and you got those results.
It's like every big choice. You're not making a choice for a short period of time. You're making a choice for the rest of your life. Okay, so if you're going to change something spiritually or physically or emotionally, you're literally retraining your brain. What is normal? Well, normal is coming to the gym. Normal is doing these things, and it's not for a short period of time. This will go on for the rest of my life. And so it's like everything else. We can still have the best decades of our life ahead of us, I believe, after the age of 55. I believe I've got the wisdom now. Most people have more money than they've ever had before, and they don't have kids sucking the money out of them. You know that. You have little kids.
I'm entering the phase,
It's like, and so it's a magical time. It can be a magical time if you believe. I changed my affirmation when I got into my late 50s, because I've always had affirmations that I've said to myself to train my brain. So, because our brains are programmed, just like our phones are programmed. And so they're trained early on what to say. And so my affirmation was and became and still is, the best 30 years of my life are still ahead of me. And when you believe that, and you say it enough that you believe it, it happens.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It happens.
I've heard that before from another person. Rest in peace, but John Y. Brown.
Oh wow!
Would say that.
Your best life is in front of you.
Yeah,
I believe
and
it's his saying.
He said this after. So John Y. was governor of Kentucky, helped start KFC, owned the NBA team that was in.
Right.
I mean, he did so many things,
Right.
and he was saying that after all of those things, right? There's no big business or anything kind of on the forefront.
Right.
But he had that mindset. My best years are ahead.
Well, Mary Kay started Mary Kay in her 50s.
Man.
In a
awesome.
time where women couldn't even go to the bank and get a loan. So you think about that. So her best 3 decades were ahead of her because she thought differently.
I love it. If y'all like this, you need to listen to Linda's podcast for sure.
you.
All right, well, we had some listener questions.
Okay.
So in our Fitness for 55 Plus Facebook group,
Which you all should be a member of.
there's about 800 and some. Probably 99% of y'all are there because of Linda. But we had some questions. We addressed some of them, but I just want you to hit on them directly. Melanie Jones asked, was this only with exercise or with diet and supplements?
Like I said, I'd already been doing the supplements and the diet. So this was the only thing I changed or added.
Yeah, so and that's a really good point, because this is not meant to downplay medication, diet, supplements. Like, they're really important. Especially medications like that, they get a lot of bad rap. Like, they can be very effective. But the big thing with a lot of the medications is you need to understand the associated risks or what comes with them.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, because they work. I mean, they've been proven to be effective, but do you want to deal with, having to pay for it, regularly taking it, some of the side effects, and a lot of them, not a lot of them, but a good bit of them, you're on them for a significant period of time.
And part of my mindset is I want my body to work, and so I'm going to stay off of the pharmaceuticals as long as humanly possible.
Yeah.
And so there are no pharmaceuticals in my life other than the compound cream I use for my hormones. So,
yeah, that's awesome.
And even recently, one of my doctors was like, well, we could do this. And I'm like, no, can you give me a natural alternative, a diet change, something I can do?
Right. And with diet and supplements, and throw your 2 cents in here as well, but from kind of the research standpoint, where a lot of people, they will recommend a few things. One is calcium supplementation. Vitamin D is really important, and they go kind of hand in hand. And then this is coming into the conversation around osteoporosis, and that's protein intake, which the vast majority of humans are under or malnourished in that department, not consuming enough protein, but bumping up your protein can be helpful as well. Was there anything else that you've really enjoyed from that? Okay. Let's see here. Kristen Fowler. What's up, Kristen? She said, how long did you go in between scans? So was it
2 years.
Every 2 years. You mentioned the medications, and then we got that question. Sherry asked, did she have any family history with this?
You know what? I don't even know if my parents ever had a DEXA scan, so I don't know. Is that even hereditary?
It's pretty, the water's pretty muddy if it's hereditary, or do you live a similar lifestyle to your parents? So yeah, but if you're a smaller individual, lightweight, smaller, particularly females in general are at a higher risk of this than other individuals. So from that standpoint,
That's interesting, because they're not carrying as much weight. Their bones are not carrying as much
Right.
weight. I've never thought that thought.
Yep. Postmenopausal women in general, mainly due to the hormone fluctuations, but then smaller individuals.
Interesting.
Yep. And what changes in your diet did you make?
None.
None? Even, well, let's say when it started to come into the conversation long before Stronger Life, like working with your physician.
Well, I mean, I think this is just general living life and who you hang out with. The people that I've hung out with in my life and my career are typically pretty healthy people. So you kind of adapt their habits, which is like, okay, let's let go of some of this fast food. We don't need everything fried. Let's do a lot more fruits and vegetables. Let's grill our meat. I think that's just been a progression my entire life, but that's really an influence of who you hang out with. If you hang out with people who just gorge themselves on food, you're more likely to overeat.
Yeah.
I have a small friend, and one day it was like she had 3 peas on her plate, and I'm like, okay, she's a small person for a reason.
Yeah.
3 peas.
Right. Yeah, the diet conversation's so interesting because the research is so varied, but what's been interesting to see is a lot of people, I think for folks where the change is difficult, it seems that for a lot of folks, the exercise piece can be a lead domino that will influence the changes of the food. Like, it may be harder to change what you're eating
Right.
Initially, but if you start to move more and exercise more, like your body starts to want different types of food or better types of food, or you start to feel the impact of, I had that, speaking of John Y, that KFC, a couple drumsticks, and man, I did not feel good at the gym the next day,
That's true.
So I'm just saying that for folks like have tried to change what they eat, tried all the fad diets. Man, if you haven't started exercising regularly, that can influence that.
Well, and some of the diets leave you so weak that it's like it just zaps your energy. I mean, talk about the protein piece and all of that. It's like, but what you said earlier is that is how change happens. If a human being makes a positive change in one arena of their life, it might be their marriage, or it might be their spiritual life, or it might be their physical life. Once you make a change in one area of your life, it is more than likely it will have that domino effect, because then you're like, wow, change is fun. Change has a positive, good feeling, the endorphin high of like, I can change some things.
Yes.
And then it becomes an addiction. It's a positive addiction that change is like, I want to change. And now in my life, it's like the thought of sitting still makes me like insane. Like if I'm not into a project or doing something, it's like, no, change is good. Change fuels my soul.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love it. Well, I appreciate you sharing your story, your perspective. If y'all liked any bit of that, you need to go to lindatoupin.com, look up Common Sense Choices Podcast. Just search that. You'll find all the links.
And they can sign up there, and I'll send them to you on email. So there we go.
Awesome. Yeah. So thanks for sharing your story, because it brings, I think, a lot of positive light to a situation I know a lot of folks are really concerned about. And there's a lot that you can do. And Linda's a great example. We've got dozens of other examples as well. But she's here to help. I'm here to help. But appreciate y'all watching, listening. If you have any other questions or want more insight or advice on some of these topics, you can just go to that Fitness for 55 Plus Facebook group. You can search that. Linda's in there. There's a bunch of us in there, and we're willing to share our perspective. But I appreciate y'all watching, listening, wherever you are. And I'll talk to you soon.